BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. And yes, indeed, we have a little bit of West Virginia rain going on right outside the window, so if you hear anything in the background, that's what that is. And today we're going to be talking all about Tiger King. The first thing that I would say is that I'm hoping that some uploads are going to be coming out a little bit more quickly because this is really going to be aimed toward people who are going to be following the Netflix docuseries Tiger King. But if you haven't seen that yet, Tiger King, available on Netflix, you can keep listening because I would really like to hear your responses to the challenge questions. And also, to help us out, we have an article from USA Today by Aaron Jensen that is going to be talking about Tiger King, murder, mayhem, and madness. Now, what we got to say about this one is that this is a docuseries that is following Joe Exotic. Like many people, I was introduced to Joe Exotic in 2016 when he was running for president as a perennial fringe, possibly even a third-party candidate. I'm actually not sure of his party affiliation, but he was running for president. And John Oliver, last week tonight, did a segment on Joe Exotic. It was very small. But then somebody I knew had watched lots of Joe Exotic videos, and then he asked me to check some of them out. We watched some of them together. All right, it's a very comical personality, a very big personality in Joseph Schreibvogel, otherwise known as Joe Exotic. So that's how I first got into his stuff, and I began following him on Twitter, and, very, very interactive Twitter page, and Joe Exotic even started to follow me on Twitter, and I'm like, oh my gosh, if only I had somebody to tell about how awesome this is. Someone who would actually understand the magnitude of Joe Exotic following me on Twitter. But then one of the things I noticed is that the Twitter page made an announcement that it wasn't run by Joe Exotic, that it was run by one of Joe Exotic's fans. Some guy saying that he is Joe Exotic's #1 fan. And then I began to notice, well, what's going on? And then that person went on to say that, just to give a few more details about Joe Exotic possibly going to jail. And I was just sitting there like, what? When did this happen? Excuse me if I've been away from the news and not really following what's going on with big cat zoos in Oklahoma 100%. But I was just like, well, what's the story here? Well, we had to find out through the docuseries Tiger King from Netflix. And the sportscaster Cherie Burris, who used to be in the D.C. area, now she's moved on, but the sportscaster Cherie Burris posted a couple days ago that she was watching Tiger King on Netflix and that it was absolutely just riveting. It's like a shocking story like she had never heard before. And I was like, oh yes, Tiger King is coming out. I have to see that just to see what's going on with Joe Exotic, because once again, I mentioned that I had a little bit of exposure to him in the past, and following a lot of the things that the Twitter account has been running, I'm not exactly sure how many people have been running the Twitter account in the past, but what I can say is that this is the story of someone who is very passionate about animals, very, very passionate about animal therapy and the connection and bond between humans, and very specifically large cats. But the big thing about Joe Exotic is he's not only the Tiger King. He bonds with a lot of animals, and in the first 2 episodes of Tiger King, you really see him featured a lot with monkeys, and even in one of his most famous videos that was put out online, he mentioned that he went up to a funeral in Chicago, and some of those animal rights activists hopped the fence, and they blew up his alligator house, killed 7 alligators and 1 crocodile. So he's all about various types of animals, and during some of those videos, I mean, I just couldn't even hear the words. I just started laughing so hard. And he had some milder videos out there as well, talking about the freedom to hang the American flag where you so choose. And that might seem like somewhat of a bland issue, but I will never forget the story of that woman who had a husband who was away in the military, and she put an American flag in her window, and her homeowners association said, hey, no symbols. It's the American flag. Let her put it up. But to jump over to our article from USA Today that we mentioned by Aaron Jensen, let's look here. Amid social distancing and isolation, Netflix's docuseries Tiger King, Murder, Mayhem, and Madness rules. The 7-episode true crime series, now streaming, explores the life of Joe Exotic, born Joseph Schreibvogel, a man with an affinity for big cats, blonde mullets, guns, and explosives. Tiger King examines Joe's life at Oklahoma's Greater Wynwood Exotic Animal Park, referred to as the GW Zoo, and his hatred for an individual named Carol Baskin, founder of the Big Cat Rescue Sanctuary in Tampa, Florida. Joe deemed that Carol Baskin was a threat to his livelihood through her advocacy of big cat public safety, which aims to abolish ownership of big cats as pets and the practice of cub petting. Cub petting, of course, like tiger cubs being introduced to people so that they can the basic concept of a petting zoo, but this was definitely much more associated with traveling. And now we've got to say, right now, this is an introductory thing. We've gone through the first 2 episodes of Tiger King, and as I mentioned, as we go through the future episodes, then we'll put out some segments. The big thing is, though, one of the things that was mentioned in the first 2 episodes of Tiger King, the Zanesville, Ohio incident. And I'm so glad that they did this because this is such a valuable challenge question. I first found out about the Zanesville, Ohio incident when I was watching a show that I've never once talked about on this channel, and that is Out Front with Erin Burnett. They were the first one that introduced me to that, CNN. And they're talking about how a man was running a zoo in Zanesville, Ohio. Sort of a private zoo, had very large exotic animals, big cats. They got out, and they got into the town. And then, not only was he facing some legal charges, what he said that was relayed on the show Out Front with Erin Burnett, it takes one person to ruin it, or just takes one person to be more than enough, meaning that even he was recognizing that big cat zoos are something that perhaps are just too dangerous to have. And if you ever want to talk about the concept of having large exotic animals as pets, not even thinking about big cats, but chimpanzees, look to the incident of Travis the chimp and Charla Nash. And that's the challenge question that I really wanted to throw out to you guys. Do you believe that people should be having big cats in their home residences, like private zoos, or just people who have big cats as pets? We're talking about lions and tigers, lynx, cheetah. What do you think about that? I would love to hear your responses in the comments section below. No right or wrong answer here. I'm not judging you in any way, because what I would just really wanted to hear was, what do you have to say to something like that? Now, I can see the foundation has really been laid out in the first 2 episodes of Tiger King. And if you haven't followed the series, I mean, it's something that is worth checking out. I would really say, though, after hearing so much from the Joe Exotic Twitter page and from Sherry Burris, as I said, this is the most amazing story in the world, I was a little bit underwhelmed. And we have to say, though, I mean, after following Joe Exotic in the past, I had heard some of the things that he had said as well, something very tragic. After his father learned that he was a homosexual, made him shake his hand and said, "Promise me you won't come to my funeral." And someone had told me that Joe Exotic had driven off a cliff and got into a car crash, and that's why he always walks in with a crutch. But actually, I believe Joe Exotic said he drove off a bridge, and that's what led to the non-fatal injuries and left him with some debilitating, not exactly disabilities, but I mean, for lack of a better term, that's what we could say. So, I mean, that's just very sad and very tragic. But he would always introduce himself as, "I'm Joe Exotic. I like big cats. I've been married to 2 men for most of my life, and I'm running for president." That's how I learned about him. And this also brings up a very good challenge question. What do you have to say to animal rights activists? Because this guy, Joe Exotic, who just simply wants to run his big cat zoo, is saying that PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, is an absolutely horrible organization, that they are trying to limit what people can do because the bond with people and animals is something that is very valuable. And following that accident that we just mentioned, Joe Exotic going off the bridge and always walking on with a crutch and a limp for the rest of his life, one of the things that he did was bond with animals as a way to sort of like an animal form of therapy, animal therapy. I mean, we have pet therapy, there are a variety of things. I mean, like, it's all across the country. I'm sure you know about pet therapy. We even see things like people that specialize in horse therapy and dog therapy. This is something that is very real. And I even met someone once who was doing her dissertation on that, just to look at the possibilities of finding ways to incorporate animal and pet therapy into other forms of medicine. Like, if it deals with things like allergies, you could create private pet therapy zones. By private, we mean like off-site from the actual medical clinic, just like in a different facility across the street. All right, this is the pet building with the dogs and cats and perhaps other therapy animals. The challenge question is, what do you think about PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals? What I would say about them is that they are very sneaky, and I don't really like organizations that are being very deceptive. For example, they would always send me these emails. Your PETA registration is about to expire. Please renew now and donate. And I was just like, I'm not a member of PETA. I've never been a member of PETA. I just do not like it when any sort of organization is putting out these types of deceptive emails just to confuse people to the point where they actually want to contribute money into their process. And there are some people out there who are even saying that the whole reason why these nonprofits exist is they take a cause that is very important to a lot of people, but then they try to exploit it just to pull in money. And maybe you've heard that statistic that 96% of money that is raised by nonprofits gets absorbed into costs. I don't know if that's true or not, but a lot of the countdown sites were throwing that around over the course of the past few years. I mean, in all reality, I really don't know if that's 100% true, but the thing is, I just do not like it when anyone's doing something deceptive about this. But a big thing is, if you would like to hear more about the conversation about is PETA good or bad, I would recommend the video that Nuance Bro did, Nuance Bro, when he's interviewing animal rights activists. I mean, maybe I could even find a link to that and include it in the description box, because with that one, I don't really care for his channel too much anymore, to be honest, but they're asking some very bold questions, and you do learn some things about people are putting out some signs, and even one of the signs that's featured in Tiger King with Joe Exotic, that PETA kills animals. And perhaps Joe Exotic could be referring to some of the animal rights incidents that he has experienced. But PETA also has a kill shelter. Most shelters, like if you adopt animals, they are from a no-kill shelter. And you hear in that Nuance Bro video that I cited, it's about PETA has an animal shelter that takes animals of all backgrounds. No-kill shelters only take animals that are available for adoption. The PETA shelter, and I believe they only have one shelter that is located in California, they take animals of all backgrounds, whether they can be adopted or not, and they also take animals with serious ailments, and they do practice animal euthanasia. It's just that's just a controversial process in itself. But the big thing that we would just really want to ask is just like the challenge question, what do you think about PETA? And do you think that people are really crossing certain lines? And you heard what we sort of read off here, that this is going to turn into something that's going to possibly, it's not possibly, this is going to turn into something that's going to go to a murder for hire plot that is going to potentially put Joe Exotic in jail for 80 years. And we're talking about something against his arch rival, Carole Baskin. And we see some things with Carole Baskin. She's heavily featured in Tiger King in the first 2 episodes. And with that, you can see that she is somebody who maybe is using a little bit of camera trickery. I believe they were trying to portray her as someone who is not honest 100% of the time. It's their documentary. They can make it any way they want. And here's a big thing to say about documentary filmmaking. They can come at it from an angle. Somebody told me this back in high school, maybe 15 years ago, and I've always remembered it. She said that she did not like documentaries because they are too one-sided. And at first I thought, yeah, you're probably talking about Michael Moore, I bet. But at the same time, a documentarian can come at this from a particular stance, the same way that an essay can be descriptive or persuasive. Like, they can just do something like, okay, here's what's happening in the descriptive format. Some people will come at it from the persuasive, argumentative format, and then they will try to show that there is something that they want to convince people of. So, we can definitely see that the documentarians are going to be taking certain stances. To continue onward with our article from Aaron Jensen, Joe's delusional sense of authority is readily apparent. This is my own little town, he said. I'm the mayor, the prosecutor, the cop, and the executioner. Tiger King roars with its many shocking moments. And what I would say, though, about this is that we can see that Joe Exotic is someone who is very passionate about the way that he has constructed this zoo. It is something that is very expensive, but it's also something that he is very connected to. And he said, though, if anyone tried to take the animals away, it would be another form of Waco. And there are many scenes in the first 2 episodes of Tiger King. People are just, showing off their firearms. But, I'm a West Virginian, so I'm pretty pro Second Amendment. I don't really think there's anything wrong with firing our guns and shooting firearms. Second Amendment, we live in the United States of America. But when you hear that this could turn into something such as a second Waco, I mean, a lot of people would just look at something like that where they would think that perhaps Joe Exotic is somebody who maybe he's a little bit out there, maybe he's not all together, or just that he's also using the zoo as a form of power tripping. And what I believe one of the things that they were trying to say in this, to go persuasive on the other side, is that Joe Exotic is also somebody who has developed somewhat of a personality cult following. But amongst the people who work with him in the Tiger King Zoo, well, the GW Zoo, we should say, that was featured in the documentary Tiger King, they're really trying to portray him as somewhat of a cult-like personality. I don't necessarily know about that, but I mean, I really don't know if he is a cult leader. I think that would be much too extreme, because a cult leader often discredits the ways of the past, and somebody like Joe Exotic is really just compounding and mounding upon the ways of the past. From the USA Today article, accusations about Joe's husbands. At one point, Joe had two husbands, John Finley and Travis Maldonado. These two were featured in the first two segments of the film as well. The three were joined in a union in 2014. Some acquaintances interviewed in the docuseries believe that neither of Joe's grooms were actually gay. Joe admits that he fell in love with straight guys, so why would they marry Joe? According to some in the series, gifts and drugs. Yeah, okay. That's kind of weird. That's not normal. I can say crazier things have happened. I mean, I was just watching Dr. Phil, and this woman says she's been pregnant for 3 years and 7 months. Crazier things have happened. She wasn't actually pregnant, though. I don't know how much love was involved, but I'm sure it was the cars that he bought John Finley, the guns he bought John Finley, the four-wheelers he bought John Finley. The former zoo manager, John Reinke, says, if they wanted it, they got it. All they had to do was ask. I know that's how Joe kept them close. Now, we're going to be seeing some very bizarre things that are going to be going on in the next segments here in this documentary. I really hope they talk more about Joe Exotic running for president, and I guess you can also see, though, that they really had a very big video presentation, although they said they weren't able to get in too many followers at once, but when they were talking about only getting 80 people watching their live streams and such, there are major television networks who put live streams out on YouTube that get around 80 views, actually, so that's not the most unheard of thing in the world, and of course people are archiving things, and as I mentioned, Joe Exotic is an extreme personality, and it's the whole concept of outrageousness draws an attention. That's why he was mentioned on John Oliver, and I heard about him, and once we started watching some more videos about Joe Exotic when he was running for president, you could see that countless news networks have talked about him in the past, because he is an outrageous figure. And as I said, this is mostly talking about the first two uploads of Tiger King. We're going to be following along with the series, and we're going to continue with the discussion. Also, look out for some stuff later today, any people who are listening live. And the other thing that I would just like to say is, please drop your responses to our challenge questions below. Do you think that people should have big cats and exotic animals in their home zoos? Like, should people be running a home zoo with big cats and exotic animals? Should they be using, like, things like lions and tigers, animals like lions and tigers, rather, as pets? Or do you think that should be outlawed, or that's something that is unacceptable? I would love to hear your response to that challenge question, as well as, what do you think about PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals? Are they good or bad? If you have anything else to say, please drop a comment below. And if you like this upload, you can hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, you're welcome to do so. But most importantly, please drop a comment below so we can continue the discussion. And until next time.